Good Saturday morning, everyone, and welcome into today's daily Bible reading for December the 31st. Today is our final read for 2022, as we are going to read together through Ecclesiastes chapter 12, with it being the final day of 2022. Of course, tomorrow we'll begin our read for 2023, which is going to be from Genesis through Esther, looking at the historical writings of the Old Testament. Really excited about it, and I hope you are as well. Should be a great read for us this year, and I hope that God will bless us as we do so. Let me go and get the text up on the screen for us so we can go ahead and read together here from Ecclesiastes chapter 12. This is the final message of the teacher to those who are receiving this writing, kind of the finality of life, kind of get to the end of it and realize what is most important here at the end. So let's read together here in Ecclesiastes 12, remembering, or I should say just recalling, you don't want to use the same word here, but recalling that yesterday in chapter 11, we saw the first two R's that the teacher wanted those who are young to consider and to put into practice in their lives. Number one, rejoice while you're young, be glad, but remember that God will bring everything into judgment. And secondly is remove sorrow from your heart, put away pain from your flesh, because youth doesn't last forever. And then finally, here it is in chapter 12, remember your Creator in the days of your youth. Do that. Why? Well, do that before the days of adversity come, when the years approach, when you will say, I have no delight in them. Before the sun and the light are darkened, and the moon and the stars and the clouds return after the rain, on the day when the guardians of the house tremble, and the strong men stoop, the women who grind grain cease because they are few, and the ones who watch through the windows see dimly. The doors at the street are shut, while the sound of the mill fades, when one rises at the sound of a bird, and all the daughters of song grow faint. Also, they are afraid of heights and dangers on the road. The almond tree blossoms, the grasshopper loses its spring. The caperberry has no effect, for mere mortal is headed to his eternal home. The mourners will walk around in the street before the silver cord is snapped, and the gold bowl is broken, and the jar is shattered at the spring, and the will is broken into the well, and the dust returns to the earth as it once was, and the spirit returns to God who gave it. Absolute futility. For the last time here is what the teacher says. Absolute hevel, absolute futility, says the teacher. Everything is hevel, everything is futile. In addition to the teacher being a wise man, he constantly taught the people knowledge. He weighed, explored, and arranged many proverbs. The teacher sought to find delightful sayings and write words of truth accurately. The sayings of the wise are like cattle prods, and those from the masters of collections are like firmly embedded nails. The sayings are given by one shepherd. But beyond these, my son, be warned, there is no end to the making of many books, and such study wearies the body. When all has been heard, the conclusion of the matter is this: fear God and keep his commands, because this is for all humanity. For God will bring every act to judgment, including every hidden thing, whether good or evil. And that is Ecclesiastes chapter 12. Remember your Creator in the days of your youth. To remember is not simply to be aware of, but it is to consider with intent of obeying. That's the meaning of the word here. Consider with the intent of obeying. So as you are growing in your youth, and as you're experiencing your youth, remember what God has said and be intent on obeying it, because there's going to come a time whenever things become much harder in life. The descriptions, beginning of verse number 2, going through verse number 5, are all ancient ways of describing the degrading of life, the breaking down of life as our bodies grow older. The way they work now is they grow weaker, and they have troubles and various types of struggles. That your arms and your hands begin to tremble, your back begins to bend over, your teeth lose their strength. You can't see, you can't hear. You start getting up earlier in the morning, and your voice begins to give out as well. There's a fear of falling in verse number 5. White hair takes over, or no hair at all for some people. It's hard to walk, and eventually death in the end. That's just the reality of life. That's how this life operates. You are born, you live, and then you die. And that's just, again, that is a reality. And this reality leads to the conclusion then everything is hevel. Everything is a vapor. It's a smoke. It is temporary. It is fleeting. That's just life. Life is here today and gone tomorrow. It is very much James chapter 5, I believe it is, that life is a vapor. That's just how it is. So when you're young, again, when you're young, rejoice. When you're young, remove sorrow from you. When you're young, remember your Creator. Do that now and really establish that as the pattern of your life, because it's much easier to establish these good patterns when we're younger than once we get older and begin to have additional struggles in this life. So that's the first 8 verses here of Ecclesiastes chapter 12 and verse 1 through 8. Well, then we have here the way that Ecclesiastes is set up. I don't remember if I mentioned this really at the beginning. It seems as if there is an author, the one who is writing these things, and then what they are writing are the teachings of the teacher. So it seems as if we have 2 different people at play here within Ecclesiastes, unless the writer is writing in the third person, which I don't know why that would be the case. I think there are multiple texts in which somebody tells the story and there's other people compiling it. But nonetheless, the anonymous author here reintroduces himself and says, listen, this is why the teacher did all this. Let me tell you the teacher's objectives and conclusion. Take everything that the teacher said by the wisdom that he had accumulated, and then he's putting into practice, and take this as the lesson. So the teacher was a wise man. He taught people knowledge. He weighed, explored, and arranged many proverbs. He sought to find delightful sayings and to write words of truth accurately. That's a little redundant, but nonetheless, the sayings of the wise are like cattle prods. Excuse me. They're like cattle prods, meaning that they are meant to move people in a particular direction. I did not mean for that to be punny at all. I did not mean to say move as if that's a cow. Maybe nobody else caught that. Probably shouldn't have said anything. Getting towards the end of the year, getting a little wore out here. But they're meant to move people in a particular direction. That's what a cattle prod does. It moves people. It directs people in the way they ought to go. That's what these instructions are supposed to do. They're supposed to help move people in the direction of wisdom, of applying wisdom within their own lives so that they can make the most of life. Because you think about it, at the end, the way the teacher presents life, in many ways, it's kind of a drag. It's kind of a bummer. Many people have said that Ecclesiastes is the writing of the depressed, and I understand that. So somebody might have the question, well, is life even worth living? You know, this is what we have to look forward to, all these difficulties and struggles. If we have all these hevels, these fleeting and temporary moments, these paradoxes and these enigmas, then is life worth living? I think the answer that is supplied here by what is said is yes. Life is worth living if it is lived with God in mind. Because that's what these wise sayings are doing. They're moving us in the direction of God. They're directing us to consider God again, to remember God, to consider him with the intent of obeying him. So yes, life is worth living if it is lived with God in mind. I believe we see that finalized here in verses 12, 13, and 14. Beyond these things, my son, be warned, there is no end to the making of many books, and much study wearies the body. But here it is. When all has been heard, when all has been said and done, when the conclusion has been given, this is it. Fear God and keep his commands, because this is for all humanity. This is man's whole duty. Fear God and keep his commands. Fear God and keep his commands. Wonderful quotes I ran across from Oswald Chambers says this. It talks about focuses on the fear of God. And people want to take the fear of God and make it just an entirely negative thing. But the fear of God is a very positive thing, because fearing God does something good for us. This is what he says. He says, the remarkable thing about fearing God is that when you fear God, you fear nothing else. Whereas if you do not fear God, you fear everything else. Apply that to what we've seen here in Ecclesiastes. If you fear God, then what are you not going to fear? You're not going to fear the injustices of this world. You're not going to fear the time and chance of this world. You're not going to fear the negatives of this world. You're not going to fear the failings of this world. But if you don't fear God, if what you're focused on is just that which is under the sun, then you're going to fear all the negatives, and you're going to be worried about all those things that could either cut short this life under the sun, or that could ruin your time here under the sun. So it's either fear God or fear everything else. The teacher here in Ecclesiastes says, fear God, and you will fear nothing else. Because at the end of the day, those things are not going to judge you. Who is going to judge you, though, is God himself. For God will bring every act to judgment, including every hidden thing, whether good or evil. Whether good or evil. And that's really that is the conclusion of the matter here in Ecclesiastes. It is, as you live life under the sun, remember your Creator. Remember, consider him with the intent of obeying him, because you recognize that he is going to judge you in the end. That's the message of Ecclesiastes. Yeah, there are a number of things within life that are an enigma, that are a paradox, that don't seem to make sense. There are things that are here today and gone tomorrow, and life leaves us sometimes wondering if anything has meaning, and it does have meaning again if we keep God in mind. And we must, because he will judge all things in the end. That is the wisdom that is given to us by the writer and the teacher in Ecclesiastes, wisdom that we would do well to consider and to obey. I appreciate you so much for the final time here in 2022, joining me in our reading throughout the Bible this year. I hope that it's been a blessing to you. I hope that it has helped you not just to grow in your knowledge of Scripture, but to grow in your ability to apply Scripture to your life so that you can be more like Jesus in everything that you do. I'm excited again for our reading beginning tomorrow as we start in Genesis and work our way through Esther. For the most part, we're going to be reading a single chapter a day. There's going to be 71 days, if my math is correct, where we have to double up chapters. So I'm going to do my best to either fit together short chapters that are side by side, or fit together chapters that just mesh well together. I'm going to do my best with that, so please bear with me. Again, majority of the time, one chapter, 71 times next year will be a couple of chapters. We'll try to keep those as short as possible, or as well put together as possible. That way the reading will go as smoothly as possible. So I'm looking forward to that reading. Hope that you can join tomorrow. Looking forward to being with everyone for our first assembly of 2023. Looks to be a great day. We're thankful for God's blessings, and we look forward to enjoying those with you tomorrow. Have a great rest of your Saturday, everyone. Take care, and God bless.